All right. I think we have 8 of 9 members, and I know Steve Jeremiah is going to join us. He thought around 7:30 or so. So I will open the meeting. This is the Sherborn Advisory Committee meeting of January 18th, 2023, and it's 7:02. And following the example set by Select Board, I won't do a roll call to open the meeting. I'll just claim the authority to be able to open the meeting. So we're open, and I think we're good, unless somebody objects to that. Let me read through the agenda, and then we'll get going. So start with liaison reports. Our primary business tonight is doing budget reviews. We're going to do Select Board legal, information technology, insurance, zoning board of appeals, and farm pond. So we'll get through those. I wanted to have a brief conversation with advisory members about preferences for doing our March 18th public hearing on Zoom or doing it hybrid. I just thought, instead of me just making a decision, we ought to have a little conversation about that and see what people's preferences are. We'll approve minutes, and that should be it. Does anybody have anything for the agenda, either changes or something else that should be on the agenda that I didn't just get to?
I just have a proposal to change the order that we do the budgets, because Jeannie does Select Board, ZBA, and Farm Pond. So I thought, for her sake, maybe we could actually move ZBA and Farm Pond up with Select Board legal, so she can do her 3 and get out of here.
That'd be fine with me. Jeannie, is that good by you?
That's fine, but Jeremy's probably going to handle Select Board. So I'll just do zoning and farm pond.
Oh,
I see. Well,
all right.
Either way, I'd say that we should probably move insurance to last, because Deb has to be here for the whole meeting anyways.
All right.
Anybody who doesn't have to be here to the end maybe doesn't would be nice.
All right. So why don't we move insurance to last, and otherwise we'll just leave the order as it stands, given what Jeannie just said.
And Dan, if I can add a free flow conversation on governmental organization going forward. The previous administration was geared a certain way, and Jeremy, you have departments reporting into you that are budgetarily responsible to you, and I'd like to know what the vision is going forward. I know how advisory has interacted with all elements of government and the volunteer.
Okay, thanks, Peter. So we could add that as an agenda item for tonight. Jeremy, I don't know if you came prepared to talk about that and you'd like to. We could also add it as an agenda item, Peter, if this would be okay with you, for, say, next week, and give you a bit of a chance to kind of, think about how you'd want to contribute to that conversation. Jeremy, preferences?
I'm fine either way, or both for that matter. That's fine.
I think it's an evolving process as Jeremy acquaints himself further with all aspects of Sherborn, and so there's no immediate answer. So maybe it's an evolution. Yet I think it would help.
So I'm happy to add that as an agenda item then. So we'll add as an agenda item right after our conversation about public hearing on Zoom, a discussion on town government organization. Nora, did you have something to add?
Yes, minutes. I just didn't know if somebody was taking minutes. Not that I'm volunteering.
Oh yeah, thanks. Natalie said that she would happily do that again tonight to make up for having not done it for some time before that. So thank you for mentioning that. I think we're good. Okay, so Couple small changes to the agenda, sliding insurance to the bottom and adding our one agenda item. I think we actually have to vote to approve. I think we have to do a roll call to approve the new agenda. So let's do that. Actually, let me entertain a motion to approve the new agenda. We'll do this really the Roberts Rules.
I move that we accept the new agenda.
Thanks, Peter. Second.
Second.
Excellent. Okay, so roll call vote. Jane,
Aye.
Wasim,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Peter, you and I, Natalie,
Aye.
Nora,
Aye.
and I'm I as well. So 8-0. Okay, great. So we are set with a slightly modified agenda. Thanks for those. All good suggestions. Thanks for that. So liaison reports before we get to budget reviews. Anything anybody wants to share? Anything from capital budget last night or any other recent meetings or information that anyone has gleaned that would be good to share with the group?
Peter, shall I defer to you?
No, I defer to my junior partner, Nora.
Thank you very much. So it looks like they're going to be fire for capital is, and I don't have it written down, so Peter, feel free if you have anything written down. They are interested in acquiring a new, was it a Tahoe? Peter? And then the police department is, and they would be trading in probably about $4,000. There's the jury's out on if that's going to go back to the police or get a credit back. I think it's like $4,000 on what they have now. And then the police are looking at a 100% EV vehicle, which is a Mustang, but it's really for police vehicles. So it doesn't look like a Mustang, so to speak. It's more for specifically for police. I don't know what color it is. That was one of my questions. And that would be an EV vehicle. And then I believe, Peter, if you can help me out, they're also looking at getting another vehicle. So the fleet would be 9, if my memory is serving correct. So replacing 2 vehicles.
You did an excellent job. The only thing I could add to that comprehensive description was that it is a Tahoe, so I can confirm that. The important part of that new fire vehicle is a system that decarcinogenizes, and I made that word up, gear from fires as they put their gear after use and prior to use in the back of it, and it airs it out. And that's not a technical term, but it takes all of the smoke out of the gear. So that's an important piece to this new vehicle for the fire department. Switching to the police, it's a pickup that they didn't get last year because of supply chain issues, and that's a hybrid drivetrain plus the EV of a new cruiser utility car, which we're experimenting to see how that saves money over the long term in terms of electric versus piston fired, gas fired vehicles.
That was interesting that the gas now is under the DPW, so they didn't really have a cost savings necessarily on the gas. And they did have the fire department did have a grant for, I think it was $20-something thousand towards that purchase of the Tahoe, and there are all year 2023s.
Just a footnote on that, Nora. My understanding is that Zach had in mind to apply for a grant for that, the decarcinogenizing equipment that would be in the back of the truck. And I think it turned out that that equipment doesn't qualify for that grant. So I think it's going to be a purchase
Okay.
rather than a grant. I think I heard that. I think I heard that today, just popping
Okay.
up. Oh, there's one of my friends. Thanks, Nora. Thanks, Peter. Anybody have other liaison reports? He wants this one wants a badge like the police department dog West has. Even if it's not a real badge, he still wants one of the fake kid badges to wear around the house too. Speaking of that, of course, Saturday was the select board budget meeting. Went from about 8:30 to 1:30. I think Steve was Steve I think was there on Zoom. Jeremy, of course, was there. Others were there. I was there as well. Interesting meeting. Interesting to get the select board's take on some of the same budgets that we've been discussing. And as I mentioned, I did do a presentation, which I guess I should send around to everybody on advisory. I don't think I've done that yet, but did a presentation on the 5-year budget projections. We talked about those projections, but I don't think I shared the presentation. So I will send that around later, as well as for anyone who's wants to play with it, a copy of the spreadsheet and also the latest version of just our usual budget model. I meant to do that this afternoon and just didn't get to it.
Now, Dan, this is a naive question because I'm not on Nextdoor Sherborn or Nextdoor anywhere. That was a new procedure of the select board to review budgets early in the cycle.
So Steve probably can say more about that than I can. I know a little bit about the history, but Steve probably knows a longer history. Or Jane.
Yeah, it's essentially, I think at least one time in the past they did a Saturday meeting with all the select board departments. Essentially, the idea being, instead of breaking up those budget meetings, with police, fire, DPW, etc., into 3 or 4 select board meetings, to just getting them all done in one fell swoop on a Saturday. I think part of that is that some of the department heads prefer it if the select board has gone over their budgets before they present to advisory, because they don't want to get caught in the middle of they come and present to advisory, we tell them to cut their budget, and then they go to select board, and select board's like, no, those things are important, put them back on, and now they have to come back to advisory and say, no, select board told us to put these back on, and then we have to yell at them again. So they don't, to avoid that back and forth, they prefer to have had select board go over their budget so that when they come present to us, they have the backing of the select board for the budget as presented. So in order to get that done, select board needs to get all of their budget reviews done earlier. So I'm only aware of them actually having done this one time in the past, and it didn't go that well. I think for the only reason, I think maybe the fire chief was sick, and then the police chief was also sick, but the police chief showed up, but then they just sent him away because he was sick. And so then it's like we ended up not actually covering most of the budgets. But otherwise, I think that it's a reasonable way for the select board to get a bunch of their budget reviews out of the way.
My comment is that's the way it should be. And with a town administrator starting out, Jeremy, to have that chain of command to evaluate and provide input before it gets to advisory, because we're looking at the entire budget, which includes a vast majority of the town departments, plus the school, plus some of the other elected officials. And so to have that knowledge base inserted in the process before it gets to us is very helpful, versus what Steve mentioned. There's a back and forth between select board and advisory and the department. So I just mentioned that.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Maybe when we come to our town government organization discussion at the end, I know Jeremy has been thinking about all of this has shared a little bit of that with me. And maybe when we come to that later in the meeting, we can, if Jeremy would like to, could share a little bit about what some of his thinking is, and some of the directions, Peter, along the lines that you just mentioned, that maybe we could move over that, so that not for this year, but next budget season, we might be able to do things in a little bit of a more centralized way. Deb, hand up, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just for advisory's information, every department head did sit down with Jeremy prior to going to the select board and to advisory, which is a new step that we haven't done in the past, which has been really very, very helpful for, I think, both Jeremy and the department heads.
Yeah, thanks, Deb. And I would say, I have heard from a number of department heads exactly the same thing, that very helpful and very appreciative of the chance to do that and talk with Jeremy before the select board or got to us.
Yeah, it was very helpful.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Deb.
I'll add that's the best practice. So
Yeah.
bravo.
Yeah. Okay, so why don't we get to budget reviews? I'm always tempted, but I won't, to take bets at the beginning of the meeting at what time we'll end, but we won't. Tempted, but I'll restrain myself on that one tonight. So let's see if I've got this right. We are going to start with select board. Jeremy, you're going to do that one?
Yes, I can handle that.
Would you like me to share the budget up on the screen?
Well, yeah, or I can share either way.
I think I'll have to make you I can share. I think I can make you co-host if you like. I think otherwise you probably aren't going to be able to.
Oh,
see
yeah,
if I can do
that's
that.
fine then. Go ahead, Dan.
Dan doesn't like to share.
Yeah. Give me just a second to get this set.
It's giving us the option to share.
It's I have a set of default setups from the town's Zoom setup, and I can't change those defaults. So I think it kind of is. I think it sort of is the way it is. Okay, Jeremy, the floor is yours, please.
Sure.
For what it's worth, Dan, I think it is set up so that all participants can share.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Perfect.
That'll make your life a lot easier at the public hearing also.
Yes, it will. I won't have to have 40 files open across the bottom of my screen ready to go. All right, Jeremy, please go ahead.
Sure. So this is the select board town administrator office budget. It's pretty similar to the budgets you've seen before, with the salaries are personnel lines up top and then expense lines below. This covers 3 positions: the town administrator, assistant town administrator, and the select board administrator, Cheney's position. The salaries are set either by contract for myself or by personnel board pay plan, and what you see here reflect the COLA adjustment agreed, the consensus there. The main change in the salary lines, this Board of Selectmen budget carries the senior citizen tax credit program, where folks come in and volunteer their time and they get a tax credit. That's been budgeted at over $12,000 annually, and you can see the actuals have actually run far short of that. It's a program we'd like to advertise more and get more folks back into town hall to help. We could certainly use the help and the volunteers, but through the last few years, the interest has dropped off a bit. But even before that, even prior to COVID, we hadn't been expending the full budget of $12,000. So we're proposing to drop that line item from $12,000 to $8,000. We still think that's ample, and probably more. We probably will not use all that through the program, but wanted to make sure we still left a healthy a budget line there for that valuable program. And what we've done is to offset a new budget line for training. So we've moved the $4,000 down into the training line that's highlighted in yellow. So that's how we kind of balance those out. That is the roll up on the salaries. There's 4, let's see. the expenses, we moved the code red, which is that reverse 911 system. We moved that budget into the police budget. So the cost for that is moved to the police department. It's been back and forth who has managed that. We think it's better situated over in the chief's budget. So we've moved that over there, added the training line. And that is the sum of changes here. Everything else is level funded. Let's see, anything else of note? The training line we'd envision, to cover. Is anybody getting an echo?
Yeah, I covered it.
Got it. For the training line, we'd envision that to actually encompass all of the town hall departments in town hall. There's not really a good expense line for training for folks in town hall. This isn't just to cover folks in the selectman's office. This is town hall wide. Recently, it's come up that some folks have wanted to do the Massachusetts Municipal Association programs that are out there. There's a finance program. There's a sort of a leadership academy program, and there's no good funding mechanism for that other than searching through random line items.
Natalie, go ahead.
Oh, I don't think you would know the answer to this, Jeremy, but I look at the consulting services that have gone from 4,000, in the past up to 19,000. Does anyone know why those are so high?
That's been an area where we've consulted out for some human resources support. So we have a consultant, Capital Strategic Solutions, that we've called upon and the select board's called upon to help do some salary surveys or position descriptions, help with some HR issues. That's been the expense line to cover that. It's currently budgeted 19,000 for this fiscal year. We're carrying that level funded for next year. With moving forward with we're looking at upgrading the assistant town administrator to add some more HR duties to that position. When we do that, there's certainly in the future, there's the possibility that we wouldn't need that outside consulting support quite as much.
So are you anticipating that in fiscal 24 that you will continue to use that consulting service? Because I know that the $10,000 stipend was also added in the salaries for HR support. And then, as you said, there is the warrant article that you're proposing to add the HR duty to the assistant TA. So given those things, is it actually still going to be necessary to expend the full 19,000 in fiscal 24?
On the conservative side, we've just decided to leave it in for now. And you can see even in prior years, it hasn't been fully expended. So the 19,000 is a conservative number, but without having some, that position actually approved by the personnel board and somebody in that role for any length of time, I was hesitant to reduce the consulting line.
Do you know, or might Deb know, what spending year to date's been for that? Just trying to think about how much, halfway through the year,
Yeah.
Where are we?
Let me take a look.
Okay,
It
if you want to
will take me a minute. Yeah, I'll
Sure,
let you
so
know.
we'll just keep going. We can come back to that, Deb. Thanks. Natalie, another question, or hand still up from before?
Hands still up from before, I'm fine.
Thanks. Okay, Nora.
You're
Nora,
muted,
You're
Nora.
muted, Nora.
Okay, could you please explain, Jeremy, the senior citizen tax credit? I just was curious about that.
Yeah.
Being new here, I don't quite get what that is.
So there's a program whereby senior citizens, those that qualify, they're retired, they can come in through the Council on Aging, and essentially they volunteer, but in lieu of payment, they get some credit on their property taxes. And so that funding for that offset of their property taxes comes from this line item. So it's essentially their pay. It's their pay for volunteering and helping out various departments. You know, they may come in and do some bookkeeping or office organization or man a service counter, or, you know, whatever. They come in, they're retired folks from maybe they were accountants in the past profession. They have that skill level, but when they sign up for that program, you know, we try to match them with, you know, some interest and a need. So it's essentially their payment for their services. And unfortunately, over the last few years, the interest has waned a little bit. Folks haven't wanted to come in person to do that. But you know, we're hopeful we can do a bit more advertising, get the word out, and promote a safe, healthy atmosphere in town hall and other departments, and have some more folks come back in.
Okay, I won't take any more discussion. I'll look, is it posted online? I just was curious more about that. So I'll just look at it. Are there details of that online?
I don't think so. And I think that's one of the things we need to kind of tune up our marketing game on it. I think periodically, I think there's been news alerts or you know, outreach from the Council on Aging on the program, but I'm not sure we have a web page on it. But I'm happy to get you more information, Nora.
No, I'll take it offline. I'm just really super curious about that. Thank you.
Thanks. Deb.
Yeah, just the year-to-date number for the consulting service is $14,900 so far. And I just kind of wanted to add that, like in FY22, it was a big number then as well, because we used the consultant for ARPA consulting as well. And I think some of this year-to-date number, I don't have the detail here, but I think some of it had to do with the search for the new town administrator. We paid a consulting service for that as well. And in some years past, I know that there have been services for like studies that fall into that line and things like that. So it does vary from year to year, but it's a reasonable number, I think.
Okay, thanks, Deb. Jane.
Yeah, Jeremy, I was just curious as to whether there was a difference between the HR support that is now stipended in the salary lines, as opposed to the HR support that is from consulting services. Would that be, is it just a question of who the money goes to, and it would be going to the you know, to someone who's already on staff, that extra 10,000, because they'd be taking on additional duties?
That's correct. Yeah. So that 10,000 up top has not been paid out as a stipend. That's actually been used really to supplement the consulting monies below. But going forward, yes, that may be used to you know, offset a salary adjustment if appropriate.
And this may be, yeah, I don't know how feasible this is, but I know that when, and Dan and Steve and Mike, if you want to jump in, I know when we talked to Dawn last week, I guess it was, she mentioned that they were also looking at having some HR consulting help. And, you know, the region is different, I guess, but, you know, and maybe it just doesn't work, but if there were any possibility that Pine Hill anyway could, you know, also participate in that, Dawn seemed to be open to potentially, you know, working with the towns if that made sense. I don't know if, you know, she's had that discussion with you.
Yeah, actually, I've had a discussion with Dawn and the superintendent about various things, that being one of them. If there is an opportunity in the future for coordinated or shared services when it comes to HR, they certainly have some different needs, the school side than the town side, and some different schedules of, you know, priority, but it's something that we should explore going forward.
Anybody else on select board budget items?
Just to confirm, Jeremy, what I heard is the human resources support line item right now in the salary, that's now also paying for consulting?
Correct.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
So flip to legal.
One more question, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
I know you moved a 4,000 from this where did it move?
It came from the senior citizen tax credit, moved down to the new line for training.
The training, yes. So is the, oh, got it. Okay, never mind. I misread this. So total expenses actually went down a little bit.
Correct.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go ahead and share this next one, and then after that, if people want to share on their own, they can, but I'll get this one up.
And not much on the legal side, on the legal budget, there's not much proposed change here. I'm told this is traditionally funded at $80,000. We're carrying that tradition forward. And so you'll see it's a level funded budget. However, you'll see, the actual spend has certainly been different, based on need, and the priorities of the day. So this is one of those lines that would be, funded at the end of the year by, shifting overages and other budgets and so forth.
Yeah, can I just add, this is like one of the few departments that we're legally allowed to overrun during the course of the year. Every other department, you can't overrun the budget until the last 2 months of the year, except for legal, because it's so unknown. Legal and snow and ice, you can overrun that budget. So that's historically, that's why we kind of budget it low, so that we don't overtax the taxpayers in case we don't use it. So that's why it's always historically been $80,000. And the good news is, so far, our year-to-date number so far is $50,000, which is lower than it has been in the last couple of years. So
That's interesting.
Keep your fingers crossed, but
that's right.
we'll likely go over 80,000, but
Yeah, I could easily.
maybe it'll be less than prior years.
Yeah, could easily see that happening with going over 80. But as described, there's a way that's always been handled in past years without any difficulties further on in the year.
And by the way, just to make efficient use of the town's legal services, I have been coordinating with town council and the chair of the select board to, just to help with priorities of what town council is focusing on, and to sort of help streamline that, so we're not wasting any legal time chasing down loose ends or doing things that we'll put a little more preparatory work on those that are requesting the legal services prior to putting in a request.
Sounds good. Anybody have anything else for Jeremy? All right. Thanks, Jeremy. Thank you very much. Okay, so we will go on, let's see, to information technology. So give me a second here. Klaus, would you like me to share, or if you'd like to share, you can, either your budget or the PowerPoint that you did?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Can everybody hear me okay?
You sound good.
All right, excellent. Let me share the couple slides first, and then maybe we'll go into the budget details. So just a couple slides, I guess, to provide a little bit of a background and to provide some overview into some of the line items, as I know there's going to be some changes comparatively to previous years. So again, just a background, we're currently in sort of the year 2 of the multi-year IT development plan. So I have not had an opportunity to speak with you guys prior to this point. I believe the IT group was really just kind of formulated last year, or was sort of under guidance from the select board to formulate last year. And we did a sort of an interim budget to push a number of things forward in terms of consolidating from some of the other groups. So this is the first year we've had sort of a full turn of the crank, as I would say, to be able to go through some of the items that we wanted to and start to formulate a plan in terms of what we're looking to do from a longer term perspective. So talking with the town administrator and department heads, we're still focusing on sort of centralizing some of the shared and common IT expenditures and resources. So you'll see in some of the line items that we'll go through where we have tried to consolidate either last year or continue that consolidation into this year. Some of the examples of that are phone and internet services, some of the network and server equipment and support, and then of course, cybersecurity and threat protection, which tends to be a big one. We were also working heavily on additional alignment for use of common vendors and sourcing. Again, really just to be fiscally prudent all around and hopefully streamline our purchasing habits across town where we can, because in general, a lot of the ITs have sort of the sort of commonalities amongst them, which we could take advantage of. We're also utilizing state bid and contract resources, again, for streamlined budget. Prior to last year, I'm not sure to what extent that had really been taken care of. So we saw a lot of fluctuation in prices. This year, it's been a little bit more stabilized. And again, we're working hard to leverage some grant funding and opportunities, not only for education, for purchase of equipment. We're just starting to sort of breach some of those now, but we have some good line of sight to some things, I think, moving forward. So I thought the next couple slides just take an opportunity just to look into a couple of some of the key changes that are driving the fiscal 24 estimates. Salary adjustments, first and foremost, this increased by 10.8K, and that was really that last year, so fiscal year 23 was only a partial year of the salary, and there was also an adjustment towards the second half of that year to accommodate a shift in the number of hours of my services are being provided to the town as part of that stipended position. So there was an increase in our cybersecurity coverage. This really came about as due to an expanded number of devices. We saw an increased number of devices, particularly across both the fire and police, as their services have continued to expand, as well as we've recently done the transition to a regional dispatch. So there was some existing capabilities that we're able to port over, but we did have quite a few additional assets that were added to our to the IT sort of landscape, if you will, in order to accommodate some of the services that we needed to be connected to for the regional dispatch coverage. For expanded, there was an expansion in the software licensing need, and this is really speaks mostly to our Microsoft services that we use across town. Traditionally, and prior to, I guess, this last 6 months or a year ago, many of the Microsoft licensing expenditures were buried within internal department budgets. So this last year, we've done a review of that and also tried to consolidate that so that it's now being encapsulated into a more of a single line item and gives us a much better visibility in terms of the total town expense of that licensing and be able to coordinate the needs in an improved way. So although the money line item for this IT budget looks as though it's expanding, there are some monies that we would be expecting other budgets to be offset by, and I'll have a little bit more detail about that in the end. We're also looking to add a town-wide endpoint management and asset tracking solution. This is fairly common practice across IT landscapes in terms of having some sort of a system that looks at or tracks all of the different endpoints, whether it's PCs or laptops or tablets. Part of it is really just for an asset management and just to understand the total landscape. And the other part of it is really to understand the software and the threat protection agents that are deployed on those assets. So if there is a new device that's added to the network and it does not have our appropriate cybersecurity coverage, we'll be able to have visibility to that and sort of close the loop on that, where today we're unable to do that unless we sort of come across it ad hoc. We're also increasing the equipment line item. This is really for critical equipment aging and replacement. It's not something that we'd had a line item budgeted to prior. It's my understanding that a number of the departments just used either sort of capital expenditures or building expenditures in order to to manage some of the acute purchasing needs of equipment, particularly if they're aging out. We're trying to expand this to have a little bit better of a handle on it, and also sort of more of a predictive model based upon knowing the age and the total use of the equipment itself. A new line item that we've added to this year, which we'd not had a line item or category for before, was this backup and archival services. Obviously, we do backups across the different departments. Again, it was done in a very ad hoc manner. So we're looking to, again, consolidate this across the different departments into a sort of a single service, single line item. And we're starting that out at a 10K, and that is based upon our sort of historic archival of files and servers and critical assets, plus some additional systems that we have determined through this, an analysis this year that they were inappropriately being backed up or are not backed up at all. We did see a decrease in our phone system line item, and that was because of a number of upgrades that occurred this past year. So we're seeing a decrease in 6K for that particular line item. Again, I talked a little bit about this for the data and server backup services. And again, initially establishing it at about 10K based upon the estimate, but we are expecting about a 5K shift from other line items or other departmental budgets to offset that cost. This is one I did want to pull forward again. This really just speaks to
Sorry, Klaus. If
yes,
you don't mind,
sure.
would you mind just
Absolutely.
going back? This was for what?
This is for our data backup and archival services. So essentially
okay, got it.
Yeah, backing up the servers or any particular file shares that we have.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you.
Klaus, this is great. I don't want to interrupt. Do you?
No, I know. Please do. Yeah, no, absolutely.
But the 5,000 that you are absorbing from other departments, do we see that corresponding decrease? And this may be a Jeremy question or the rest of advisory, to track that decrease from the department centralized to IT services here.
No, it's a valid question, and I guess my response, and Jeremy, please chime in, is I believe you should see this. This is something that I have coordinated with the chiefs of both departments, and again was part of the discussions of this year in terms of the continued consolidation efforts. So for instance, the PD was the group in which we spearheaded the initial round of our backup service, and they had been picking up the cost for that across a couple of different departments over the last couple of years. And as that continues to expand, plus from guidance from the Board of Select, we're looking to bring this in as the line item under the IT budget rather than have it under the PD. So you should be seeing item like that come out of their individual budget, although I can't speak to their budgets.
No, and you shouldn't. And this is a carbon copy comment from last night's Capital Budget Committee, where fuel, as an example of a cost that was shifted from the department to centralized, DPW in this case, was done. Yet the departments that benefited from that cost reduction in fuel or IT services then absorbed those savings and still met the guidance to advisory. And so I just want to make sure that it's not deja vu all over again.
Thanks, Peter. If I can just jump in. So Jeremy, sounds like that's something perhaps you could help us track with, making sure that, say, the 5K from police department, that we'll be able to see where that's now presumably, not appearing in the police department budget when we get to that?
Sure, yeah, we'd be happy to point that out. So, where there has been, shifts from, for IT, where there have been shifts from one department and into the consolidated IT, happy to show that. But you'll note that, the IT budget itself is there's been a fair amount of deferred needs that haven't been met in the past. So there's certainly not a one-to-one for all of the proposed expenses here in the IT budget, but where there are, we're happy to show that.
If I'm reading it correctly, it sort of looks like the table that Klaus is sharing now kind of gives us a roadmap to at least first order what some of those changes might look like. And then, Jeremy, as you helpfully highlighted there, of course, there are other changes that are just plain increases because of the things we weren't doing that we need to be doing.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Jeremy. Klaus, do you want to
We can help
continue?
spell that out specifically for you.
That'd be great. Thanks. Klaus, do you want to continue?
Yeah, absolutely. No, and again, I think it's worth noting that I did add this slide after going through these numbers with the select board. Again, really just because we did get that question in terms of some of where these expenditures were shifting to and from. So I thought, that this would help spell that out, and again, hopefully help it, Jeremy, make it a little easier on the chief side to reconcile where that's coming from on their end.
Yeah, really appreciate you doing this because the clarity and the transparency is helpful. And I think for everybody just understanding with a lot of moving parts, how the pieces fit together.
Sure. And so with that, actually, do you want to share the budget line items and then we can sort of just coalesce on that?
I think I need you to unshare first. Okay, perfect. And then I will get this up in just a second.
Well, while that's coming up, Klaus, can I please ask one question about all the systems that you are, I don't know what the right word is, purchasing, let's say. Is there any help in vetting vendors for municipalities? Like what is the process for selecting a vendor that's, let's say, providing cybersecurity services, right? To make sure that that vendor is, not stealing the keys, right? I mean, is there some sort of centralized vetting that you can rely on, whether by the state, by, collection of municipalities, whatever it is?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I will be trying to be real super concise because there's a lot of different direction we can go down there. So yes, I would say we do our best, at least, or I've tried to this last year in terms of some of that answer specifically. So I had mentioned in terms of purchasing of equipment that we've been trying heavily to rely on vendors that adhere to the state contract, which, kind of we're trying to piggyback on the state resources that have already gone and done the vetting, not only for quality, but of course for cost in terms of the equipment. They have also done the same in terms of groups that are providing services. So for the cybersecurity service is probably the one that's, may provide us the most risk if we ended up going with a vendor that wasn't providing a sort of a quality or a standard that we would typically expect. For that, we did go out and talk to a number of different groups, talk to a number of customers of theirs, as well as customers of other vendors in terms of how that choice was made. It turns out that that particular group was, of course, on the list of approved service groups that are on the state contract list. So it made for the pricing discussions a lot easier. And it's also one that we had looked at in terms of is a relatively local business or local to the state, and has a lot of connectivity to existing state resources to which we felt we trusted.
Thank you. Thank you for the concise answer.
Absolutely.
Please go ahead, Klaus.
Sure. All right. So I'll just run through this. We talked a little bit on the IT support salary line item. Again, the jump in terms of the budget was really a reflection of the change in a change that was made this past year in terms of the number of hours for that the stipend is covering. Next in the line item for the equipment, again, that was really what I was talking about earlier in terms of increasing that by about $5,500, really to account for aged equipment replacement, to which we had not done before. I mean, obviously, you know, we budgeted for 2,000, which essentially was carried through in terms of previous spending. And what we are finding this past year is that there was quite a bit of equipment that was being purchased. It was really just being buried into quite a few other line items. So it was difficult to get an understanding of what our actual spend was going to be comparatively to a budgeted.
Klaus, does that include updating the servers in the basement of town hall?
So it does. Yeah, no, thank you. So the number that we came to this year was indicative of a replacement of a certain number of servers and PCs sort of on a per year basis. And so I think that's really where the reflection of that was coming from. In general, our equipment needs, I think, as a town is fairly modest. We really are, you know, the two servers that we have at the town hall are both 12 plus years old. They really don't owe anybody anything at this point in time. And one of the things that we are trying to do with this line item here is be a little bit more proactive. As you guys can imagine, you know, supply chain right now is still a struggle from an IT perspective. So if a server was to die or have some sort of a significant failure, we actually don't have a spare one lying around to just jump to. So we would see a pretty marked drop in services or capabilities until that equipment came in. And right now we're looking at about 2 to 3 months worth of lead time on those.
And the number here, the 7,500 number, so that, as you said, would cover updating those servers, but you're thinking of this as kind of the number going forward. This isn't like a one-time thing for doing some stuff this year. This is sort of the what you think it would take to sort of keep things in general across town in reasonable shape.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. So,
Okay.
you know, ideally, you know, if we could squeak out 2 servers out of it, you know, that would be fantastic. I think it's more than likely we'll do 1 this year, assuming this number, you know, it's likely that this number will stay. You know, again, we'll base it on the actual spend, but you know, I think this is a conservative number that it's going to allow us to stabilize on a per year basis.
Jane, go ahead, please. Muted.
Sorry about that. This might be a combined question for Klaus and Jeremy, but if equipment was previously being purchased through, you know, various line items in various departments' budgets, is this another area where we might see this number coming out of some combination of other budget? The differential?
Yeah, Jeremy, I mean, feel free to obviously chime in. I unfortunately think the answer would be likely no. And only because, again, everything in past years has been done on such an ad hoc basis that it wasn't that those were built into those models prior. You know, but you know, sometimes I worked closely with Sean as if we built out the DPW, and I know that in certain cases, if he, you know, if there were certain line items within the building that, you know, maybe the fuel or the lighting or something was, you know, other equipment within the building was not, he had some extra funds in there because he wasn't spending as much as he had originally anticipated. He may sort of shift the use of that fund into what really should have been categorized as sort of IT equipment. And so as we've sort of looked at that over the last couple of years, that's why we're trying to build out this number to account for that so that we have a better sort of visibility to it moving forward.
Yeah, and part of what Klaus is trying to do as well, and some of the software that he's looking to purchase, will help us get a better inventory on all of the equipment that we have out there, what software's on it, the age of the computer, you know, just where it is, where it sits. You know, is it being utilized? And we'll get over time, we'll have a better handle on what we have, and we can set up more of a planned replacement and not an ad hoc replacement, just conglomerated out of different budget lines. And from a policy perspective, we'll be, looking at the departments to go through the IT department for their IT needs, not, just source it on their own. So over time, we'll get a better handle on and control this budget.
Jeremy and Klaus, thank you very much. So from everyone's historic budget that had an IT component, is that dropping to 0 and then the funds as of next year going towards IT? Or are they remaining in the department controlled by Klaus and Jeremy?
So I think we'll see a reduction in those line items from different departments, and certainly some departments I think will utilize this particular IT budget for sort of their total needs. But we've also encouraged the individual departments to still retain some sort of an IT expenditure posture, because there may be individual department needs which are sort of outside the scope of us trying to consolidate some of the stuff. I mean, I really assist with sort of recommendations or sort of, utilization of our purchasing practices. But I know, for instance, the People GIS software is something that hasn't traditionally fallen under this sort of IT, purview, because, it's an expense on some departments, not necessarily all departments. We really tried to look at the use of this IT budget as being sort of services that impact the majority of the departments versus individuals.
Nora,
Thank you.
you're muted, Nora.
Usually so good about that. Sorry about that. So speaking to that end, would the department head be really seeking your consulting services, so to speak, on what they would be spending? I mean, another example, I don't know. It just seems like it would be all under you. I'd like to know another example of something that wouldn't be covered under this. Like, say, for example, the assessor's office, or would they be coming to you with anything they purchase?
I would say in certain cases, yes, in other cases, no. So like assessor's actually a good one. The assessors do have some software that's very specific to the assessors group, and that's historically come within their budget. And so I think at this juncture, I've made the recommendation for that to continue. Jeremy and I have had some conversations more recently that, I think in the next year or so, I think there's going to be some opportunity to sort of reevaluate that. And it might be at the guidance of both the advisory as well as the select board for items like that to be further consolidated under an IT budget. But at this juncture, we've sort of left some of that in place under their individual department budgets. The PD and the fire department, both, they equally have some software and individual IT needs that are more on the emergency services side. Again, that's individual to their departments and still coordinated in their budgets, and it hasn't sort of been pulled forward into, this structure.
Steve G.
Yeah, if this is already covered, I apologize, but I'm just curious, have you guys seen the budget increase as the software industry in particular moves to a more, what's the word I'm thinking of?
The subscription models?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we absolutely have, and you'll actually see that in a line item a little bit further down.
Steve T.
So I think so far everything here looks great. I think just hammering away on the whole consolidation thing, because one of the things that I am trying to do as I look at everybody else's budget is when I see budget items that seem IT-like, I usually want to ask them, okay, have you spoken with Klaus and are you consolidating that? I mean, so excluding, I guess I'm gonna go at this from a different perspective. Excluding very specific specialized software, for specific departments. Are there departments that have budget items that you intend to consolidate that have not been consolidated into this budget, in terms of could be the generic equipment, cable TV charges, phone charges, internet charges. One example that comes to mind is the library. I think the library has already presented to us, and there was a couple of line items in there that seemed very generic IT like. I don't remember if it was phone or internet. Mostly it's like, honestly, Klaus, I'm not concerned about why is your budget going up. I'm mostly concerned about tracking when things are supposed to be coming out of other people's budgets and ensuring that they aren't now essentially double dipping by having their phone service paid for by you, but oh look, they also have a $3,000 budget item for phone that they're not really using that now they can basically use for something else. So
yeah, it makes total sense.
Yeah. So I guess that's the question, is that are there other departments that you know of where you intend to consolidate their IT related things, but they, for one reason or another, those things haven't actually come out of their budgets yet?
Yeah, and I would say, unfortunately, that's a difficult question to answer. I would say for the most part, yes, we've been working hard to do that. This year in particular, we really focused on the cable TV, the phone, the internet, what I'd consider sort of the foundational services charges, and that we have done. So over the last year and including this year, I would have expected those line items to more holistically have been pulled out of the individual department budgets. I would say the one asterisk to that has been the library. I think had the library transition to the new building happened before now, I think that we would have had a better impact in terms of where we're at. But there is still some services like internet and phone that are incorporated into this budget. But I know that the library is technically carrying sort of double services because of the two locations right now. So I would anticipate that Liz's budget line items will start to diminish either this year or next year summarily as part of this consolidation. Is that all of it? That I can't necessarily answer. I would say the cybersecurity stuff absolutely does. The data server backup stuff we're incorporating this year. Software licensing, we're doing our best, but I wouldn't say that that's 100% complete. I would expect the software licensing to continue to fluctuate into next year, particularly as we have these conversations about software with the different departments.
Klaus, just to follow on that, is there an understanding with the library that those items you mentioned will be consolidated? Maybe not immediately, but over the next year will be consolidated into the IT department?
Yeah, there definitely has. I think one of the things that made it a little more difficult this year was because there were some IT specific items that were essentially carried as part of the construction. So things that are, a constant spend that has already been incorporated into this budget. And again, I'm going to, particularly talking about the phone charges and internet charges, because now with the new building, the phones for that are on the townwide system versus the phones that are in the community center right now are not. So those functions are, but the library does have some software needs, and of which I'm not entirely aware of just yet. So we'll continue to do that. But Liz does understand that some of that stuff has already been incorporated into this budget.
I'm going to make a statement, and I want everyone in advisory to shoot me down if I'm wrong. But if we put out guidance that non-salary should be X, and we have a cost that is shifting, and I used the fuel as an example previously. Here it's IT, licenses, software, hardware, etc. that is coming out of their budgets, going into other budgets, that now the bar is lowered for every department that has those line items. So when we see, DPW, and Sean's always a good one because he's top of mind, that his IT spend shouldn't be absorbed by others. And Sean, if you're listening, I'm not picking on you, but it is a shift to another budget, and we can't include that in the guidance of 2%, 0% for salaries and other expenses.
Peter, I'll be quick to agree with you rather than to try to shoot that down. And I think Steve's comments and other comments are going very much in that direction, that, we're going to want to see, say in the police budget, see the offset where the IT line's going down and it's not just getting absorbed somewhere else with, hey, we're within guidance. So I would agree with what you just said, Peter. Others can chime in, may have a different perspective on that. Jane, you had your hand up.
Oh, sorry.
I was just going to ask you, Klaus, about there's a couple of references to an expanded number of devices. I think you said that had to do with the regionalization of the call center. Did I hear that right?
That is correct, yes.
And can you explain a little bit more about why that is, and why those do the devices already exist? Are the expanded devices already in existence, or do they have to be purchased?
So those devices that I'm speaking about are now incorporated into the landscape, but they were purchased as part of the grant going to regionalization. So there's no additional equipment that's expected to be purchased, but because those devices now reside on the town network, they provide the exposure like any other device. So we would want to make sure that they're covered as part of our cybersecurity and threat mitigation efforts.
And this was new equipment that came to the town as part of the grants associated with the regionalization that provided assorted new devices that help us hook in properly to the new regional call center.
That's correct, right? So there was approximately, off the top of my head, probably 50 new devices across town, between camera systems, the door mechanism systems. There was essentially a laptop or tablet for every fire vehicle. There was a number of additional devices at the police department for connectivity. So there's been, for a town like Sherborn, it was a significant increase in the number of devices that we would have on the network on a typical day.
And are those needed so that all those locations can better communicate with the regional center? I mean, why?
Correct. Yeah. They're individual. So of course, for instance, at the police department, there's now a number of systems in place that we didn't have before, because there's not going to be a dispatcher physically there in this, right? Our dispatch is now located at Holbrook. So there were some additional systems for communication if somebody from the public stopped in, if somebody from the public needed shelter there. At the fire department, we did not have the capability of vehicle tracking and also understanding call specific information for each of the vehicles. We just sort of lived without it, but it's considered a standard now across the country to have that information. And so that required us to install the tablets or PCs into each of the fire apparatus. And again, that was the equipment purchase, installation, and all of that was covered as part of that grant. But of course, because it's a device on the town's network, we wanted to make sure that our cybersecurity protection and software were also placed on those devices.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Jeremy, you had your hand up if you wanted to jump in here.
Yeah, I just wanted to note that, the budgets you haven't seen yet, the police, fire, to public works, you will see budget lines that have had IT spend in them drop to zero. I just leafed through quickly just to get a couple, but we could certainly help summarize those for you just in a simple table. But you know, there's a line here in Public Works for internet and email that has 3-year average spend is $3,000. That's been dropped to 0 in this proposed budget for FY24. In the police budget, there was a line item called information system software. 3-year spend average was over $18,000. That's been dropped to 0 in the police budget for FY24. And then there's this similar line in the fire department. IT services in the fire department has a drop as well. Not they have some specific software that is for fire only, but the general sorts of software and equipment there is a reflection in the fire department budget being reduced. So there is, and we can do a better job to kind of itemize and spell that out for you.
Thanks, Jeremy. That's very helpful, and I think as we go forward with some of the larger department budgets, that'll be a really helpful thing to just help everybody track and keep an eye on and make sure that it looks the way that it should. Steve T.
Yes, and Jeremy, I think it would be very helpful if you had a sort of a simple chart that just kind of tracked all of those things. I mean, I think last year, Deb, I don't know if you were the one who did this, but I think because last year was the first year when this consolidation was happening, and I think in a lot of the department budgets, there was like a small table in the corner that also did the same thing, just kind of like summarized which things had left this budget and were going into the IT budget. Again, that's very useful.
Yeah, it's kind of on the bottom of this spreadsheet. If you can see, like, where we took some of the money from last year,
right.
You would see it there. So
yeah. But essentially, having that information handily available is easier than having us kind of like try to. I mean, I'm still going to do it anyways, but look at individual line items and try to track. All right, what's what here, and is this actually being reduced because it was put into the IT budget. Now I want to totally switch gears here a little bit on you, if this is okay. I have a question about the sort of the salary line, and it really has more to do, I would say, with kind of the overall strategic goal of the IT department, which I don't know if you are equipped to answer this or not, Klaus. And I don't want you to take this question as some sort of that I'm questioning your credentials or anything, but I would like to know your background, your professional background, because I know that you were originally you were just working for the fire department, right? And then you just happened to be doing a lot of this IT stuff, and then I remember one year eventually the fire chief decided we got to give Klaus a stipend. And then we started talking about this IT thing, and then you just kind of like gravitated into this role. And I know there was talk of, oh, someday we should hire an actual IT director. And, I'm not saying that you don't deserve what you're getting here, but it's like $20,000, like, for an IT director at even a pretty small corporation that would pay for barely like 1 day a week of an IT director, right? And so I guess my question is, what is your actual role right now in the town? How is it split between departments? And then is there a strategic goal going forward for the staffing of the IT department? And it could very well be like, let's make Klaus the full-time IT director. I just want to know what the plan is.
And Klaus, if you could say a little bit about that, that'd be great. And then I will follow up with just a few more details on the stipend increase that happened over the summer. So Klaus, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and Steve, thank you so much for the question because they're very pertinent. So just a little bit about me. So I'm actually my sort of full-time gig, if you will, is I'm actually a scientist with a genetics company. I also have an IT background in terms of system administration. I was an operations manager for another biotech company at one point in time prior to my current role. So there, I've worn a variety of hats, most of which was heavy on the IT side or informatics or analysis in the background. Just turns out that I have this sort of weird hobby that I like to be a fireman. So I've been with the town actually almost 25 years now with the fire department. And so over the course of time, it used to be, well, geez, we need a website. It's like, well, I know how to do that. I'll do the website. And then it's like, well, we need email. It's like, okay, well, I know how to do that too. I'll get you email. And so that has sort of continued to expand over time. And it really got to the point where I was actually sort of probably doing somewhere between 10 and 20 hours a week at the town. And somebody had said, geez, you really should get paid for this. It's not really fair. And so I think that's how it sort of came to be, to try to put a stipend together. So that's sort of I guess the history of where that came to be. But I think your question is really a good one. And this is actually something that I've spoken not only to Dan about, but also to Jeremy and actually to David prior to this, is that, we're hoping in the next year or so to have a more strategic plan long term for the town. As much as I would love to be in that position, I mean, I do have sort of a career pursuit that I enjoy the path that I'm on, but I don't want to leave the town in a position where it's sort of exposed to me only providing X number of hours per week, right? As the town needs continue to grow, I think it's going to be advantageous for the town to sort of get a handle on what direction that they want to go. We have spoken to some other surrounding towns relative to what they have done with their IT needs. Obviously, towns like Natick and Framingham are on a little bit of a different scale, and rightfully so, versus some other towns like Norfolk or Medfield, Millis, and Medway, which, in certain cases, they also have part-time IT personnel, or they heavily rely on consultants and outside services. So in terms of the town's perspective, I think this is a really active conversation and something I'd love to be part of. But, I do think that it's going to take some additional advisory over the course of time to determine a directionality of, is a sort of a part-time position meeting the needs of the town, or if that continues to grow, do they want to go the direction of sort of making this a full-time position, at which time the salary would likely need to grow pretty substantially, or is there sort of a midpoint, which the reliance on sort of consulting services or outside services along with a part-time person could continue to fit the bill. And I think that's a really active conversation. And I'm hopeful that this is something that Jeremy will have a chance to really dig into, as part of his new tenure.
Thanks,
Klaus,
Klaus.
I'd like to be the first to thank you for all the years of service on the fire department and in your IT niche. And the town has definitely benefited. Every taxpayer has benefited. And the conversation will continue, as you suggested, to meet the town's needs. But first and foremost, thank you for all that you've done.
Yeah, thanks,
You're
Peter.
very welcome. Thank you.
And Klaus, I'll chime in with a little bit I was going to say, but I'll be the second person to say thank you for all you've done in putting together this kind of IT vision and so on for the town. So just a brief bit of history about the stipend. So Klaus isn't out there on his own explaining that. So over the summer, it became apparent that Klaus was doing much more work than what his prior stipend was covering. So Klaus and I had a conversation sitting at one of the picnic tables outside town hall when it was still warm enough and nice enough to do that, and talked about many of the same things that Klaus just mentioned. And I was, of course, also very interested in Klaus's background and what his kind of IT expertise was. And at that time, there was a conversation between me, Jeff Waldron, and Diane Moores, where we agreed that just as a matter of number of hours, that Klaus's stipend should be boosted. And so that happened. It was summer, it didn't come up to full advisory to a bigger conversation and discussion, but that's the history. That's a little bit of the history of how it happened and how we got to this stipend number. But as Klaus mentioned, it seems like we are going to want to have a continuing conversation about how the IT work in the town is managed and what the best way to do that would be. Jeremy.
Yeah, and I guess related to that, prior to Klaus's work, I'm aware that a consultant was used, and you can actually see in the line item here, IT consulting fees, you can see that historic trend in the past and what's been budgeted going forward to basically acknowledge all of the help that Klaus is doing now and that we don't have to consult out.
Right.
There's a 75% decrease in that budget line.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, thanks for highlighting that. Klaus, did you want to continue? I think we got you just a little off your what might have been your program. More that you wanted to walk us through here?
You know what? I mean, I am happy to continue answering questions, but I think maybe in the interest of time, please, by all means, let me know if there's any additional line items you think I should dig into, but I will certainly, rely on your guidance at this point.
So any other particular bits that people would like to talk about?
Yeah, hi, this is Wasim. First of all, quick comment. I think I really like what you've done, Klaus, so I'll be the third to thank you. There are very important elements here. Cybersecurity is very important. Kind of vetting various equipments and services that town employees can benefit from. That's very important because not everyone, we don't want everyone to be buying, equipment separately. And, so this is really, everything I'm seeing here is very positive. So thank you for that. A quick question, the last column here of numbers, I just don't understand these numbers, the potential difference in budget from fiscal year 23. There's something wrong, like for example, the consultant fee, I see a reduction in 75, but am I reading that incorrectly? I'm sorry, you know what? I'm comparing it with the, okay, not with the projection. I need to compare it with the budget, right? Is that what it is?
Correct. As a matter of fact, I think that extra column, the column H there, which is the fiscal year projection, was something that I was using to help provide guidance in terms of developing the 24 budget requests. So it really, it's column G and column I that is sort of the true year-to-year comparison.
Got it. Okay, thank you. That answers my question. And one last comment I wanted to make about the salary line item. I think when you presented last year, the comment I made, and I still remember it, is that this was very low, right, for what we're intending to do. Like, so I completely understand why this went up, and again, thanks.
Jane.
Yeah, this might actually be a question for Deb. If you're trying to follow the money here and understand how the budgets have shifted across departments over the past few years, when I look at the notes below,
Right.
That includes town buildings and the police department, and then there's another set that talks about the select board and the town buildings. Can you just help orient? I mean, first of all, are they lined up? Are they just notes, or are they lined up in the columns for the appropriate years? Can I assume?
They're lined up by year.
Okay.
So in FY20, we had charged, if you look way to the bottom, the $52,000 was in the Board of Selectmen budget, and $23,000 was in the town building budget. So in FY20, we called a IT budget of $75,000. So I took that $75,000 and I tried to put it into the account codes that we currently are using so that you would have some history. So that $75,996 is the same $75,996 that is right there. That's correct. And so the same thing is for the following year in FY21, we charged $74,000 to the Board of Selectmen budget. So, just going back based on the vendors, we took that $74,000 and tried to line it up with the different account codes that we use now, so that you would just have some kind of history And actually, we did this more or less last year to try to help Klaus see where we had spent money. And then we did the same thing with FY22, like that was the first year that we had an IT budget. So those are the expenditures that went into those line items, just for history purposes. And then that group of numbers from that say town building, town hall, stuff like that, those numbers are actually in those budgets. But I included them on the bottom here because in FY23, those rolled over into the FY23 numbers so that you could see if you include those numbers, really our total IT expense in FY20 was $101,000. In FY21, it was $97,000. In FY22, it was $123,000. So that when you looked at FY23 budget, you wouldn't be thinking, oh my God, $8,000. We've never spent that much money, but we just had spent it in different departments. Does that make sense?
Yes, 99. I'm 99% there. The only trouble I'm still having, and tell me if this is correct. So I understand all the IT expenses up the top, and at the very bottom, I think I understand that as well. So I think you're saying that those middle notations, town buildings and police department, were in their separate budgets, right?
Yes.
So for example, when I look down below and I see a 0 in FY21 for town buildings, but then I see a bunch of, it's 11, 12, 16, 17,000 or so that actually was in the town buildings budget. I think what that means, tell me if this is correct, is that those were, there was 0 in the quote unquote IT budget for town buildings that year, but it was sort of tucked into other aspects of the town buildings budget. Would that be the right way to interpret that?
Yes. So that wasn't in that line item information technology, but it was in the other line items for telephone, cable, and things like that. Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anybody else with specific questions for Klaus?
Actually, can I ask a follow-up question?
Of course.
It may not be for Klaus, but it's probably for a combination of Deb and Jeremy, I think. So would it then be fair to say, or not, that those middle notations for town buildings and police department, those numbers that were tucked into their budgets elsewhere and not for IT, is there any way to follow that? In theory, all of that should have come out, over these years have come out of their budgets now, right?
Right, yeah. So when we review town buildings, you'll see on the bottom of the town buildings budget, those specific line items on the bottom there again, so that you can see that at one time they were included in the town building budget, but they no longer are. So that they are zeros going forward in FY23 and FY24.
So so then we should be able to see $24,000 worth of decrease from FY22 to FY24 in these two departments, town buildings and police. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So to kind of draw this discussion to a close, one, I was just going to say I'm kind of echoing something that Steve T said. I'm a big fan, Klaus, of what you're doing, and I think these are important initiatives for the town. And like Steve, I'm quite comfortable with the additional spending, though share the comments that other people have made of wanting to track that the things that are being added here are appropriately coming out of other budgets. I did, given that this is a pretty big change, I did want to just kind of check in with everybody on advisory to, so I think I said I'm good with this, but I wanted to make sure others either felt that way, or if you didn't, that we talked about it now so that we don't get to the public hearing. And then since this is a department with a big change, that there's something comes up then that we haven't had a chance to talk about. So we don't literally need to do roll call, I won't even call on everybody, but imagine that I am calling on you. And if you have concerns about something here, this would be the right time to say, hey, this seems like a really big change. Maybe it's not the right time or the right way to do this. And this would really be the time to bring that up and flag it, and so that we could talk about it while Klaus is here with us.
I personally don't have any issues, but I did want to bring up for Klaus, because this will probably be your first year having to do this. I don't remember if you did at last year a public hearing or not, but more than likely, because of the fact that the budget is going up so high, we will call a hold on this budget during the public hearing, which means that we will discuss and vote on it separately. And it's to some degree, it's to give you an opportunity to explain this to the public at the public hearing, and for the public to ask any questions about it if they want. So just be prepared that at the public hearing, you may have to go through this spiel, maybe a brief version. I think you get 5 minutes to present, so you can probably just do your PowerPoint and then open the floor to questions. And then at the town meeting, advisory doesn't call holds, but anybody in the public, anybody voting can call a hold. So I would anticipate the possibility that somebody in the audience might call a hold because it's going up, and you may have to explain it again at town meeting.
Yeah, thanks for that, Steve. That's really helpful. And that's very much why I did just want to kind of check in with everybody, since if this is our, not that we all have to agree necessarily, but this is our good chance to talk about it if there are concerns about this. Mike, it looked like you were about to comment if you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, and I think, I don't see any issue with the budget myself, or certainly on any individual items. I'm more just out of curiosity. I don't know if anyone has ever really looked at this, but I feel like it might be interesting, particularly on the IT aspect, comparing our budget for IT with similar local towns like Millis or Medway, and some of the other ones that that Klaus actually mentioned. It just might be interesting whether it's higher or lower. I honestly have no clue what it would look like, but it just might be interesting.
Klaus, any thoughts on that?
Other than, I would say no, other than the fact that I would encourage that. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great point. I don't know, Jeremy, maybe there's some connectivity that you might be able to leverage. I've had a chance to receive some information from some of the other towns, but again, only in some of the point questions relative to sort of consulting and how they've approached certain things, not necessarily from like a larger IT budget perspective.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. Nora, Steve G, Natalie, you haven't chimed in. Thoughts?
I'll chime in. This is Nora. I'll chime in. Yeah, the only thing, it would be nice just to tease out a little bit on whether it's percentages or actual amounts, but I would think, I don't know, on what's town, what's fire, the different, what it all incorporates, if that makes sense.
This is Natalie. I don't have any questions.
Okay, thanks, Natalie. Steve G, anything that was on your mind?
No, it all seems pretty straightforward. Deb's explanation helped a lot understand, and I guess the only thing I would say, and again, I apologize for being late, so if this was already covered, but it seems to me that it would make more sense, if I'm understanding this correctly, to have one point person dealing with the IT for the entire town, regardless of the department.
Yeah, and that I think is Klaus's vision and where he's going with this.
Yeah, so I completely agree on that. So yeah, no, thanks for giving me an opportunity to talk.
And Nora, just coming back to your comment, you were thinking, like, say, on the cybersecurity line, how much of that is is kind of covering things in different, like in fire, police and so on?
Exactly, but I don't know if there's a way really to tease it out, but
I could imagine, but I don't know. Klaus would know that might be challenging if the idea was to kind of consolidate and I guess it could, I don't know, kind of devices in different departments or something, but I'm not, Klaus.
Yeah, I could definitely work with Jeremy and sort of maybe put something together offline. I think we could. I think there's sort of a combined. There's elements that absolutely were coming over from a one-to-one line item approach. There's a separate layer there that's just the sheer number of devices, and that's partially how the group that we use for our security operations, they do their contract based on the total number of devices.
thank you.
Jane, hand up from before or another comment?
Well, one just small specific question. Actually, Nora, to your point about breaking things down, maybe I'm misunderstanding, but Klaus, I thought you did have a tab specifically on cybersecurity that did do that breakdown. But I had a question about that because it looks like it adds up to 27,434, but then it carried over as 30,000 in the budget.
That's correct.
Was I misreading that?
Yeah, that's really what I was just trying to say is there's multiple elements to what makes up that cybersecurity. And actually, yeah, thanks, Deb. There's another little piece here that's brought up. And these are these are expenses that I would expect to come out of some of the different departments, and you can see it's not significant in each individual department. But then there's the secondary layer of the security services group that we use, that the billing that they do and the way that they approach their services is on the total number of devices that are being protected. So it's almost there's this software that's individual to our firewall systems, and then there's the cybersecurity, the threat management or endpoint protection system that's incorporated into that 30,000.
But in your tab, just so I understand what you're showing, on your tab about the software licensing, for example, you have number of users. Is that different from number of devices?
Yes.
Okay. So that would not be a way that we could understand how that translates to a cost equivalent. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, and I think this goes a little bit to Steve, your earlier question about the subscription model versus the sort of just paying for a software forever, which a lot of these companies are doing now is basically on pure software subscriptions, the only offering they have anymore. So meaning that the total number of devices we have doesn't equate to the number of users.
Is there a way to track, and this might be more when you have the more robust endpoint tracking management installed, but is there an accounting of how many devices there are in each particular department? And would that serve as a proxy, as kind of a blunt tool to decide, all right, well, what percentage of the IT services are being used by, the fire department because they have X number of devices of this and that type?
We certainly could do that. Yeah, I mean, that is not obviously broken down in this way, but that's certainly something we absolutely can do.
But this is broken down budget, right, Klaus? I mean, am I understanding this correctly? I mean, you can see there's a general services budget, but then there's a total that is associated with town hall, with the police department, with the fire department. I mean, I was assuming that was the budget breakdown. Have I misunderstood what's being represented here?
No, you're correct. That is, but I think Steve's question was relative to sort of a proxy for, totaling it up for some of the line items, right? Because there's both the users and the devices that will contribute to some of these different layers. And I think that's the hardest part, right? It's sort of a layered approach. Some is covered by software, some is covered by the individual device. And that's what sort of ultimately rolls up to those numbers. And that's something I could continue to work on and provide that offline.
All right, anybody else? Jeremy, you just unmuted. Did you want to
No, I'm sorry. I think for this sheet here, I think it's a summary of the budget line specifically for software licensing, which sums to 27,000. So for that particular budget line in the IT division, there is a breakout. But if you're looking for like the overall IT budget, I think that's to Klaus's point, and Steve's point, we could use some ratio of total devices.
Thanks. All right, everybody good with this? Ready to move on? I know it's getting late. Everybody's of course ready to move on.
Well, can I just say one final accolade to Klaus? It is so wonderful and refreshing to have somebody that we can call and get an answer for right away, that you can't quantify that. So when we have a problem, we can call our text Klaus and he responds immediately. Prior to when we had a consultant, we would have to wait a day or two, and productivity is just so much better, and Klaus is just invaluable.
Yeah, thanks, Deb. All right, so to wrap this up, Klaus, thank you very much for the time and energy in putting all of this material together, and for enduring, I don't know, whatever it's been, 45 minutes or something of people throwing all kinds of questions at you. Great job in presenting this. You were super well prepared. You had answers for pretty much everything. Really appreciate that because it makes our job a whole lot easier. So thank you. Okay, so let's go on. So we're going to go on. We're going to go on to zoning board and farm pond, and that's going to be Jeannie. And Jeannie, I'm happy to share, or if you'd like to, you can, whichever you prefer.
I can share, let's see. Maybe I can't. You might want to share for some reason.
Okay.
It's not coming up.
Just start with zoning board.
Zoning boards, yes. I mean, mine are easy compared to the ones you've dealt with.
Jeannie, you're not expecting a 45-minute conversation here like with Klaus?
Quick and easy. Zoning board is basically legal notices, as you can see, and that's the advertising. If we happen to have a 40B project come in that requires more work, more advertising, more notifications, the application comes in with a $750 fee from the developer. So that covers that. And then as more things are required from the developer, we give them estimates, they give us a check, we deposit in the account, and it gets paid for out of that. That would be for consulting fees for anything from groundwater to Board of Health issues, conservation. So that's covered with that. So there it is. CBA is easy.
All right. Any questions for Jeannie on this one?
Just a brief question. That's probably more for Deb. Is what's the spend to date on the ZBA legal notices? I'm just want to get an idea if 1,100 is going to be enough for next year.
Yeah, let me take a look here. It is $791.
We have about 309 left, I think.
Yep, that's correct.
And I do have a legal notice bill invoice coming in for a hearing next week. So that will be around 200. I'll probably have a couple more hearings before the end of the year. I don't know whether you want to increase that. The cost of advertising has gone up. We had several hearings this year that probably caused us to spend more, and they were just regular hearings. They weren't 40Bs.
Yeah, that's my concern, is that I just feel like there have been a lot. And I'm like, I wonder if 1,100 is even going to cover it. But it's a small number, so I wouldn't mind just keeping it where it is, and then in the coming years we'll see actuals for fiscal 23, 24, and can adjust accordingly for fiscal 25 and 26.
Okay,
Unless anybody else on the committee thinks that we should increase it right now.
I mean, leaving it where it is fine by me, though, if there's a clear sense that it's gonna be more. I mean, again, it's a very small item, not a big deal. But if there was a clear sense it's gonna be more, I'd be fine bumping it up as well and just doing that. But, you know, it's not gonna be a big deal to cover it if it runs over, as Steve said, and we could also just keep an eye on it.
that's happy to bump it up, but like I said, we could be done for the rest of the year. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd say just leave it where it is, and then if that is clearly a mistake in a couple of years, we can bump it up then.
I'm fine with that, given that we're running above the 3-year average. So that seems fine.
Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Anybody else on this one? Okay. Farm Pond?
Farm Pond.
All right, give me 1 second.
Farm Pond, as you know, is a revolving budget. It's a revolving fund. I can't spend any more than what I have. I'm asking for a limit of $160,000. I'm thinking it's going to be fine. We are going to have to increase salaries this year. I got Natick is going to be paying their lifeguards starting at $18 an hour. Their waterfront directors are at $28 an hour. The minimum wage is $15 now, so that's when I would start my gate guards. I'm hoping that we have as many stickers sold as we did last year. We've had a little issue with the water, as you all, I'm sure, know. So right now, that's where we are. We increased the stickers last year, the increase in prices. I don't suspect we're going to have any increase in expenses. Last year, we did pay for part of a new dock that it's a ramp that goes on the existing dock. That came out of expenses because I didn't have the total amount available from the capital article. But I don't see anything that's really going to be major this year coming forward.
What are the sticker prices right now, and how are
It's
the out of town sticker sales?
The residents are 90, and for the first car, 30 for the second, and non-residents pay 300, and we sell 150. But this year there's going to be a full-blown swim team, so we'll have more of the $300 stickers from Dover residents, because we allow them to get a full sticker if they want.
Okay.
I mean, the non-residents bring in at least $45,000.
Anybody with other comments or questions for Jeannie?
Hi, Jeannie. This is Wasim. Why is the actuals, the fiscal year 23? Oh, that's 20,000.
That's because the fiscal year, the major amount of money comes in from January 1st to June 30th. So the 20,000 was from July 1st until right now.
Yeah.
Got it.
So
Most of
the stickers get sold in the spring.
Right. Get sold in the spring. Yeah.
It's basically, we go more on a calendar year, but it's a fiscal year budget.
Yeah.
Okay. So to compare the revenue, the COVID years, the 20 was really the hard hit COVID year,
Right.
and then things
We
improved a little in 21.
Supplemental.
Right. In 21, we opened it up a little bit, but there were some limits, if I recall, right? And then 22 is the open to everyone. Is that correct?
21, we had, was that the year of the reservations? I think it might have been.
Yes, the reservations. Yep.
And last year, in 22 was back, a little more back. And like I said, we're hoping for at least 113,000 this year.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Would
Anybody
we
else?
overwhelm the ecosystem if we expanded the out of town from 300 to 400?
Well, I mean, I think if we increase the amount of money that people would pay for the non-resident stickers, I don't think that we would get as many people paying $400 as we do for 300. And then you're only really, I kind of look at it there, that I don't know if it would hurt us.
I'm sorry, Jeannie, it's the N, the sample. 300 people to
Oh,
400
no,
people.
150 people, they pay $300 a piece.
Okay, so increasing that 150 is the question.
I mean, it was 125, we went to 150. I don't know how residents would feel if we kept adding. It's not that big of a beach. I would have to, would I have to add more staff? It's hard enough to get staff as it is. I'd like to keep it at 150.
This is Steve, Jeremiah. So is that decision left to you, Jeannie? Or
No.
is that?
Nope, anybody can, the select board can vote to increase it. It is not up to me. I know that. So.
Yeah, because well, I'll save my comments for later, for a different format. But thank you.
For what it's worth, I'm pretty comfortable with 150. But, not, as you said, that's up to the select board ultimately.
Yeah, well, the issue that I see is it's really more around boats and other things in which we don't really have adequate coverage to make sure, for instance, that somebody who does decide to bring their boat in and go fishing actually washes their boat.
Well, we do have from April 1st until November 1st, we have people there from 6 to 9 every morning that cover that. So it's to get somebody that would be there all day to make sure that doesn't happen. That's not so easy to find.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I've lived in town for 30 years. I've witnessed it too many times. But I certainly appreciate the limitations. We can't have it locked or somebody there 24/7. So it is what it is.
Right. I mean, we can't lock the gates to keep people from going in when there's no one there to monitor. And, it's covered really well from the time school gets out until usually the end of August. Somebody's there from 6 in the morning to 7 at night, and then the gates get closed for the night.
Yeah. Anybody else? You can tell, Jeannie, Farm Pond is one of these things that's near and dear to everybody's heart. So there's always something to talk about around Farm Pond. Thanks, Jeannie. Appreciate it very much.
We try our best.
Yeah, you do a very good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think we're set with that. Let's go to insurance. And that will be our last one. Deb, do you want me to screen share? Do you want to do that?
This is actually Jeremy. Because this is the
sorry. Okay.
This is property insurance, correct, that you're looking at?
Yes. So here's what I had. You can tell me if this is what you were intending to talk about.
Yep, that's you, Jeremy, right?
Yep. I can
Okay.
speak.
Sorry for the confusion.
Yeah, no worries. So this is for, hold on a sec. So the town's property, general liability, auto, professional liability, and cyber insurance roll up under the package policy line. We're insured through the Massachusetts Interlocal Insurance Agency, MIA. And they'll give us this time of the year, they'll give us, based on our experience over the past years, an estimate on what our costs will be going forward. In general, they've given us for our sort of our package policy, they've given us an 8% increase to put into our budget. So that's reflected in the package policy. But the bigger increase on that is including the library back into the town's insurance inventory. So through the years that's been under construction, we have not had to carry the property insurance for the library building. Now that it's reached substantial completion and has a temporary occupancy permit, it's now time we have to pull it back into the town's insurance inventory. And we've received a quote for an annual payment of $22,654 for the insurance of that building. The package policy, we've included an increase of 8% plus the $22,600. And then the other line item that's being adjusted is the police and fire accident and disability and dismemberment insurance. And again, that's our insurers has recommended that we carry an 8% increase there. And then it sums up at the bottom.
All right.
We budget for insurance, we budget for the full cost. As if there's like an early payment discount that we get that we don't budget for, but we take advantage of. So there are discounts that we end up getting throughout the year, like that early payment discount. There's training discounts, that sort of thing that can help us reduce the costs. But since those are hard to know exactly what we're going to end up with for the year, we budget for the full amount. But we do take advantage of some and do receive discounts throughout the year.
And Jeremy, all of this appears in this budget, not in any other department budget. So in the library, there isn't going to be an insurance line in the library budget.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
And another thing to note in the insurance, the package policy, one of the buildings is the community center. And we've been having discussions on offsetting the cost of that insurance from the community center budget to get a reimbursement from them. That has yet to be netted out of this budget, but that would be, I believe it was about $3,600. Diane, are you on?
I'm right here. It's actually $3,554, and I invoiced the community center today. And once they send the check, it'll go right back into the insurance line item.
Okay.
Oh, so then that will come out. That will come out of what's here.
Yes.
Yeah, and we're talking right now. We're talking about we're invoicing them for the FY23 budget.
Oh yeah. Of course,
But
right.
going forward now in this budget line, we could net out that cost from this budget line for
Yes, we could.
FY24.
For FY24.
We have not yet done that yet.
And the expectation is, since they're getting invoiced for 23, they'll presumably cut a
Yeah.
check. The expectation is it'll be the same for 24. So probably does make sense to net it out.
I think we're comfortable to do that now that we've started that practice.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Okay.
dollar amount is $3,554.
Okay. Okay, great. Anybody else with questions? I don't know why the insurance people can't follow advisory guidance, but we'll have to have a talk with them about that. Figure that one out.
I will say in about a month or so, we may get better numbers. So
Yeah, it could go up, could go down. Yeah.
They gave us conservative numbers. In about a month's time, we could be revisiting with a lower number.
Yeah, of course.
Are
Now,
all of
with
these
home-
estimates,
Jane, go ahead.
are all of these estimates at this point, or are any of them known for certain?
their estimates, their best estimates based on what they're providing. So, but we're told in about a month, we'll get even better estimates.
Anybody else? Okay, good. Thank you, Jeremy. Okay, so I think that gets us through budget reviews. Let me just kind of do a quick, just kind of gauge for our next agenda item on how to do the public hearing. I've been thinking we would do this on Zoom as last year. I think there is a possibility of doing it hybrid, so we'd be set up in the, I think in the select board room in town hall with a hybrid setup, similar to what was done for the Saturday budget meeting for anybody who was in on that. Could be just Zoom, could be hybrid, which means some of us could be there in the room, some of us could be remote, depending on, I know some people I think are out of town that week, but available on Zoom, not in person. So thoughts, preferences, better to do it just on Zoom or try to get logistics set up to do a hybrid option?
Dan, personally, I prefer the hybrid Zoom. It saves 50% on my dry cleaning costs. I only have to wear half my outfit for the
Well,
meeting.
so just to be clear, the options that I'm suggesting, Peter, either all on Zoom, in which case, you know, you have all the liberty to handle your sartorial choices however you wish. The other option would be hybrid, and then those of us who wanted to be there in person could, and those who wanted to be on Zoom could be on Zoom. I don't think it makes sense to try to do a strictly in-person meeting where everybody has to be in person. I don't think that makes sense this year.
This is Natalie. I vote for total Zoom.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
I agree with total Zoom. I mean, maybe that's just because I've I've run 3 public hearings now on Zoom and it's gone fine. But also having attended the select board Saturday meeting, which was hybrid, but I was on Zoom, like the audio quality for anybody that was talking in the room was not great. I don't know how, you know, from the reverse, Dan, you were in the room. I don't know how the audio quality was when somebody was talking on Zoom, if that was okay, but certainly me remote, it was sometimes hard to hear what people were saying in the room.
Okay. There were some, so in the room it was fine. There were some audio difficulties. I think there's some effort to do some reconfiguring of equipment that might resolve that, but we don't need to be the test case for that with the public hearing. Anybody else? Anybody who has a strong preference for hybrid? I'd assumed it would be all Zoom, and that's kind of was my working assumption until kind of a side conversation during the Saturday select board meeting when, you know, the hybrid option was put on the table for us. Steve G.
yeah, I was just going to say I'm going to be away for the month of March, so it would, for me to participate, it would have to be either hybrid or 100% Zoom.
Yeah, no, I recognize that and wasn't even considering the all in person option. Maybe a year from now we can consider that. I'm hearing votes for all Zoom, which I'm fine with, but I just wanted to check in with everybody and make sure that fit the sentiment of everyone on the committee rather than just making that decision on my own. Sounds like there are no, okay, we'll do all Zoom. Sounds like there are no strong advocates for anything different than that. And last year I got to watch Steve do this meeting all on Zoom, and I took very careful notes, copious notes. So hopefully I can do half as good a job when we get there this time. Okay, so the next thing that we had added to our agenda was to have a bit of a conversation about town government organization. I'm going to suggest that we do that, but that given this is meant to be the beginning of a longer conversation, that we keep it pretty short since it's already past 9. So I was going to put like max 10-minute time limit on that. And then I think we should just, whatever maybe we won't go 10 minutes. If we go 3 minutes or 4 minutes, that's fine. But when we get to 10 minutes, let's do a hard stop and just wrap up, because I think this is one of these topics that can fill as much time as is available. I know I could talk about this for hours. I'm sure others could as well. So let's go 10 minutes. And then we can pick it up again in subsequent meetings as makes sense. Peter, you had brought this up. Was there anything, Peter, you wanted to kind of start out with before we pass it over to Jeremy?
Thank you, Dan, and I'll take less than 10 minutes because of the time limit. When I first joined advisory, the Division of Local Services had this example of what a small town should do in the budget process. And it had a town administrator kind of being the quarterback. And I said, oh, that's nice. Sherborn didn't have that. Sherborn had an advisory board, a select board that was evolving, and department heads that were autonomous. And we didn't meet that ideal. And so, Jeremy, and not to put you on the spot, but as your vision going forward, is that Division of Local Service template worth replicating, or what should we do better on advisory, I guess, to help with the budget process? Because it seems like there's a number of conversations that go on in different meetings and then all culminate in the worst case example at the town meeting, all town meeting. But how can we do it better and more efficiently?
Well, I think that's a pretty good model. I mean, they are sort of the state experts on budget development and review of finances of municipalities. I'm sort of observing this time around. I've bitten my tongue a few times to not insert myself into the process as much as I might want to in the future, but I've certainly made some observations and been able to kind of compare and contrast my experience in other communities in the budget development process and the town meeting process and the warrant. And I have, even in interviewing for the position, I would try to search the town's website for the town's budget. I couldn't find it. It wasn't available. So, I think it's something that I'd like to help you all with, is to develop a budget document. Let's put this together that to help tell the story of the budget. The budget ends up being more than just numbers on a piece of paper. It's a statement of values, is sort of mission statements, there's goals that I think we could do a good job pulling that together in a budget document to help. And then there's actually some grants available that other communities have taken advantage of, some community compact grants that would help us. They're not very competitive. So generally the money's there for the taking to help us, hire somebody to help put together a budget document. And, maybe over the course of this coming year, it's a process too. They just hand you this document. They go through, they have meetings with various departments and committees and you folks, and they try to tailor this budget document to the process that either you have or you want to have. So part of that consultant support would help us sort of put together a process that we all are comfortable with. So anyway, that just some thoughts off the top of my head, and some things that I've been thinking of as I've been meeting with the different departments. One thing that you have to structure into that is, the government structure of Sherborn doesn't have all of the departments roll up through the select board and town administrator. So you've got the schools obviously are on through the school committee, but There's also the Board of Health. You've got elected officials like the collector, the planning board, the library. In some communities, those do come in more, under one budget envelope, but not as much in Sherborn because they kind of roll up through elected officials. But that doesn't mean that we can't still all work together to put together a unified budget document. So,
No, and to be
thoughts.
fair, the school committee is beyond our purview, except in a collaborative engagement. They report, they're their own entity as a regional system, as we all know. And that's a big ticket item. So that falls outside of what I'm suggesting. But again, I'll be quiet because there's only 7 minutes left, I think, and let other people speak.
I think we're down to 4 minutes at this point.
4 minutes. Okay.
Anybody else want to chime in on this, react to Peter's or Jeremy's comments? And again, this is a conversation that I think, as Jeremy suggested, that's going to continue through the year. I think I've certainly gotten the impression that Jeremy is going to kind of lead a very productive effort here that we will all have an opportunity to engage with and participate in. Nora, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I was just gonna say what Jeremy, I call it like a one sheet for the people of Sherborn to see, okay, this is what's going to the school, but then these are all the other, if you can do it on one piece of paper, so to speak, that would be amazing, rather than have to really dig into that big book, which is difficult for people to do. So thank you. And how long, and you said you needed a grant for that, or could we just get something, couldn't we just whip something up?
We could do it both ways. I mean, we can whip something up and create it ourselves. I mean, a big partner in this will be the finance director as well. So you'll note on the select board agenda for their meeting tomorrow is discussion on moving forward to fill that position permanently. So I think, with that position and myself together as a team, supporting the select board and advisory, we can certainly move forward in the direction you folks want.
Jeremy, correct me if what I'm about to say is incorrect, but Nora, my sense of the potential value of a grant is other towns have done this in various different ways. I think there are other towns that have models that we would probably look at and say, hey, that looks pretty good. And a grant, would let us, I think, bring in some outside expertise. Here are kind of 3 or 4 models that different towns similar to Sherborn have done, and might more quickly get us to the place we want to be than doing it on our own. That was Jeremy. Is that a fair?
Yeah, that's fair. I mean,
it doesn't mean
might
that's the
have
way
some
we need to
ideas
do it,
wouldn't have
but
thought of otherwise.
Doesn't mean that's the way that the town would need to go. But I think that's the potential. That's the potential benefit of trying to pick up one of these grants. Anybody else on this? Okay, so we're right on time. Part of what as Jeremy highlighted, part of what I think will be a lengthy conversation. And Peter, thank you for flagging this, bringing it up. Glad that we could start that conversation here. So the last thing we have to do tonight is minutes. So thanks to Natalie for putting these together. And I will do the usual thing of popping these up on the screen. This is the version that Natalie circulated. I think I caught two typos that I fixed in the earlier version. So I'll do the usual of just scroll through this and please offer any corrections, typos, grammatical errors, poor stylistic choices, though there'd be none of those, of course.
Hey, come on, Dan.
Just teasing, Natalie.
Or stylistic choices. Holy cow.
I just had a question about the FY24 budget review description. Is that where it is?
Right down here near the bottom, right?
Okay, it's already changed, so that's great. That's great.
Anything? If everybody's good, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes as displayed on the screen.
I move to accept them.
Thanks, Natalie. Second,
Second,
and let's do a quick roll call. Peter,
aye.
Nora,
Aye.
Steve G. You're muted. If you want to just wait.
Yeah, I wasn't there, so I'm
Oh.
not sure that I should be voting on that.
So it's your option. You're perfectly fine voting. If you prefer to abstain, that's fine too. It's really your call.
I will vote in favor then.
Okay, and you're fine doing that.
Yeah.
Mike,
Aye.
Wasim,
Aye.
Jane,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Natalie,
Aye.
and I am I as well. So 9-0 for approving minutes. Perfect. Thank you. And unless anybody has any last things, let's wrap this up. And I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Thanks, Peter. Is there a second?
Second.
Wait a minute, next meeting is next Wednesday, correct?
Yes, thank you. I'm glad you brought that up. It's January 25th, and we are scheduled to do inspectors, conservation commission, sustainability, planning board, and board of health. So that's who's on tap for next Wednesday. All right, I think we had a motion and a second. Let's do a roll call again for adjourning. Peter,
Aye.
Nora,
Aye.
Steve G,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Wasim,
Aye.
Jane,
Aye.
Steve T. You are muted, but
Aye.
I could lip read there, so that was good. Natalie,
Aye.
and I as well. So we are adjourned at 9:18. Thank you very much, everybody, for bearing on through. See you next week.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night.